Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have RDB from the Great Midwest. He is not, of course, live with me in physical person here in the Extreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Tonight, RDB, we're going back into the vault. You are a big Jackie Chan film kind of guy. So you said, hey, I want to watch his first American release in a small little movie called The Big Brawl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I recall this. And as soon as I started watching, I went, yep, I know this film very well. It was something that was played on HBO a lot. And this actually came out before what really started to get people talking on the streets, as it were, the mean
Yes.
streets of Pine Hills and Cannonball Run. So we'll talk about Cannonball Run here, not probably anytime soon, but I'm sure we're going to review that because, it's got a lot of people in it, right? Even though
Yep.
it's a stupid ass film. But Jackie Chan, I'll go first and say I'm not as big as fan because I'm not a fan of the goofy comedy. However, that being said, I like him. We've reviewed several of his films on here. This is interesting because it's Jackie Chan coming over from what he knows to what he
Mhm.
doesn't, which is the American market. And I got to ask you as we get started here, was this a first watch for you?
This was and coming off from me watching the Fearless Hyena again,
Yep.
which is another heavily features Jackie Chan's martial arts or mixed martial arts to say, because he doesn't just do one style. He does several styles of kung fu. And one of the reasons I do like Jackie Chan, because unlike Chuck Norris stuff, he does self-defense kung fu. Basically, he doesn't attack. He attacks, but he basically mainly just avoids getting hit and then takes the cheap shots. Where everyone else kind of like will just go like, we're used to American movies or stuff, where you Chuck Norris, one kick, where he blocks, and moves around, dodges, kind of like an orangutan or a sense you said, or a monkey, or whatever you would call it, or.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that defensive style, and I kind of the whole ballet, kind of like that, kind of like it fits him, and he's really mastered that. And I capitalize on the whole entire situation as far as being that style as what he does. And so this movie was we were originally talking about, you and I, Rob. We're talking about, okay, what do we want to do now? Because we kind of want to keep reviewing stuff in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
The 80s, it's popular, and there's a lot of stuff we haven't watched, and especially when it comes to martial arts. And I was going through, and I was like, we even floated some ideas, taking like a martial arts movie from each year, talking about it. But then it got down to the point where it's like, why don't we just look for our martial arts movies that we haven't seen, or at least we haven't reviewed on the channel. And this is one of them. And I figured, why not add to the Jackie Chan, playlist we have in here?
That's true. And one thing I want to say about Jackie Chan before we actually get into the movie is I want to kind of talk a little bit about who he was as a person and kind of give a little bit of perspective going into it, because I know you being a big fan, this is a very obviously early watch, and it is different being an American film. So Jackie Chan, obviously growing up in China, Hong Kong, whatever he is over there.
Mhm.
Hong Kong was a part of a British territory, which got turned over, I think, in the late 90s to them. And there's, the politics aside, we're not trying to get into. He's a member of the Communist Party, and just growing up, you were kind of shoehorned into based off of your talents. Hey, you're going to go here, you're going to go there. A similar thing happened in other communist regimes across Europe, where like if you were in school and everybody took a certain sort of physical education class, you'd say, hey, this guy looks like a natural, we'll put him on wrestling, we'll put him on the weightlifting team, we'll put this person here or there. That's just how it was. You were sorted out early on with physical gifts, and that's how you had national teams. What made it different with us in the United States is we took our amateurs, people that volunteered to do it without being funded by the state to do them, and that was the whole Olympic thing. Jackie Chan, of course, ended up in a martial arts kind of opera ballet style, so he can sing and carry a tune a little bit.
Yeah.
So the style you're talking about totally is very apparent, and this movie illustrates that, which we'll get into in a moment. But for him coming over to the States and trying to take over the American market and bring his style over here, obviously he didn't become successful for almost 15 years if we count this as the first one, right? So
Yeah.
I would say this, and I'll hand it over to you. I think this movie, generally speaking, no matter what you think of it, it's a very good introduction to Jackie Chan if you know nothing about him. Despite some of the things that we might say are good or about it. It's got all the Jackie Chan isms that you would see in his movie. It's very representative of what he's capable of doing.
Very much meant to just showcase him, what he can do, wanting to capitalize on the success of Bruce Lee. who I'm not sure if Bruce Lee had passed at this point. When did Bruce Lee pass away?
Yeah, he was gone.
Yeah, he had just
For several years. Buried up in Seattle and all that.
Yeah, so obviously there was a void to fill, and be heavily inspired by Bruce Lee, and also having worked with Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and some of the movies, they got Enter the Dragon cast, or at least some of the stuntmen to come in here to help with the filming. So, and they really wanted to showcase this is the next Bruce Lee. We even get a scene here where he's fighting, and the guy takes his shirt and he rips it off, and then he's in the wife beater, and he's got the pants, and he's doing the whole the Bruce Lee stuff bits.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously they really wanted to showcase him. And ironically, though, this is 15 years before he actually becomes famous in America with a Rumble in the Bronx. Right. His big hit. So obviously Jackie Chan over the years has told people not to watch his movie, whether it's because he's ashamed of it or because, because he was basically kind of forced into finishing this movie because he wanted to break contract in the middle of it. There's a whole controversy with this. They even changed the name from the Big Brawl, which is the original name, that's why I have it on here, to Battle Creek Brawl.
Yes.
In the movie. So basically the gist of the whole entire movie is that he's basically, his father owns a restaurant, and in the 1930s, he's being harassed by these goons. Jackie Chan comes and defends them and basically fights in an alleyway. We learned that he learned all his fighting moves from Mako, who basically will recognize both who watched Conan the Barbarian.
Yep. Big
component of that. The scenes in here where he's training with Mako at Mako's place is just awesome. And of course, the comedy, because Mako says, "Oh, no, you can't have sex and all stuff, impure," that he's hitting on ladies in the other room. So I always like that humor. But yeah, so basically he's basically sent to San Francisco to go pick up his brother's fiance. He's flying in from
arranged marriage.
Arranged marriages, from China. And when he gets there, she ends up being abducted. He's taken by this rich, basically aristocrat, you could call him if you want to, who is also involved in these illegal street fights. And I don't know how illegal they are if they have cops there at the Big Brawl at the end, But anyway, he basically says, "You're gonna fight for me," and then he's like, "Well, I need to bring her back, otherwise I'll be for shamed." So it gives him basically another Japanese or Chinese hooker or prostitute, basically, that go pose as his brother's fiance. And whether his brother's fiance finds out or not, we don't have no idea. But the cool thing about this is that the girl who actually ends up being in who plays May, who's supposed to be shipped over, gets kidnapped. She's Soon Lee Klinger, for those who watched Aftermath, the same actress. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So she's only in the movie for about 5 minutes.
Right towards the end.
You never see it again. But the other thing I'll talk about is that usually when they give Jackie Chan to these movies, we've seen Police Story, he always has a girlfriend. He's just kind of a ditz, Here, they give him an American girlfriend. Her name's played by Kristine DeBell, a former Playboy playmate.
Very good-looking woman.
Yes.
Very natural looking, the way Playboy used to do it.
Girl next door.
She was in Meatballs.
Yes, Bill Murray's love interest, I believe. And so she's in here. And at times, this movie, it felt like the 30s. And then we get towards the end, the last 30 minutes, we're in Texas. I felt like it was in the 1980s. The way people are dressed, it was like really uneven as far as they kind of lost the plot. And so basically, he ends up going to Texas. Yes, that's what the big they call it, Battle Creek Brawl. They got an announcer there and everything. You got all these different guys. It looks like these guys could have been coming out of WWE.
Tom Close's father was there at the end.
Yeah. Like these guys, these brawlers, you call them the fighters. It was literally much Street Fighter, the video game. You had people from all over the world coming in to fight here.
It's the American Kumite.
Yeah. And it was interesting because they looked like I wouldn't doubt it if some of these guys, the American wrestlers, were actually probably just professional wrestlers at the time.
They were massive individuals.
Yes.
Completely jacked. One guy that had the guy whose finishing move is the Kiss of Death, who we'll talk about shortly. As far as the final battle, he is somebody that if you've watched a lot of these kind of road movies in the 70s and 80s, you would recognize him. Go, I don't know who he is, but I've seen him in films.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with this film because you talked about it being kind of a small budget film. The music score is done by Lalo Schifrin, and of course has done Mission Impossible. He's done a ton of stuff. It's basically a jazzy kind of theme redone over and over. It's just unique. And also the guy that plays the heavy warlord here, his last name is Ferrer. His son is Miguel Ferrer, who was in Twin Peaks and a bunch of other stuff in the 80s. And so this is his father. So it's like they definitely put people in there that had a long history of being heavies and such in this film. So it's not like they just blew off this film as far as doing it. They tried doing what they can to support him.
Yes. There's also a rollerball in this.
Because rollerball was the thing in the 70s. I cannot say I've seen, maybe I saw rollerball maybe once or a demonstration, but obviously with James Caan, you've got rollerball. You've seen other things. You have Xanadu, which might be the kiss of death for roller skates. I just don't know, but it was a thing and they included it. And the thing about this being a Jackie Chan movie is, I want to point out two things since you mentioned all the big guys. Jackie Chan's 150 pounds soaking wet. He's not a big dude. He's a fit guy. He's very acrobatic. He's very fluid. And I agree with you with his style. His in tennis, you'd call it like a wall. Just get everything back. You don't attack. You let the other person make a mistake. His style is fun to watch. It is pretty. I think he's very emotive in his face, despite the cutesy fake smiles and stuff like that. I like it when he looks mean and serious. That's my favorite part of Jackie. To me, when I say this movie has a lot of Jackie Chan isms, you get the stunt display early on, which is very good. Him climbing by himself, waiting for his girlfriend in the convertible buggy underneath. And he's just coming down. Hey, introduce us to a character by showing him doing stuff. You see him with the fight early on. You get the training montage. Every 5 to 10 minutes, you get a unique, different part of training with him. And there's a great scene when he's training with his uncle there, Mako, where he's got the cane. And there's a shot overhead where he gets around his throat, and you can tell it's literally just wrapped around his throat.
It's right in his press up in his.
The only problem I have with this, and it's not like it made me mad, is when I'm watching it, I'm going, "Holy crap! Everything looks like it's half speed, doesn't it?"
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. As Jackie Chan said, we didn't.
He has to slow it all down.
Yes, so like I said, it does look slower than he normally is, But I said I do love they show off everything. Every Jackie Chan movie you've seen in the movies, he's jumping over. People are swinging a sign at him. He's jumping over it, going down to the ground, flat on the ground. Mako trains him by throwing like basically hardballs at him. Yep, baseballs at him. And he dodges and he starts showing off.
You see him bridge up, kip up. You see the different styles as he dodges.
I'm just waiting for one to. I was waiting for one to land in the groin.
I know, right?
Or at least makes this goof up. But it was nice because the whole he fights him with the cane at the after throwing the baseballs at him, showing off, and I love that how it's just like this simple small little guy can just trip him with a cane. And I kept thinking, for those who read Daredevil, that's basically what Daredevil had. He had a cane, he had a trick cane like that, and he tripped people up with that. So like canes have always been used before too. We saw it in the Avengers TV show. Some
would say the whole history of, say, ninjutsu would be the fact that when you had the oppressors from your government taking everything from you, that you would have to hide and disguise your specific martial arts that was culturally appropriate for your area that you grew up in, and how it was passed down to you, but word of mouth. And so capoeira from Africa is very beautiful to watch. You see it only a little bit in some Van Damme movies, but it's unique. And now it's hidden in dance. You had a lot of farm weapons for ninjas coming from that. So you're right, because he not only did Jackie train a lot of styles. Here they show you his acrobatics. They show you his hand-to-hand. They show him working on a karate dummy, for lack of a better term. There's a special name for it, and we've seen it in Rumble in the Bronx and other things. You show him going up against guys of different sizes. You see him using props like he always likes to do, where he does little comedy stuff. You really do get a ton of action in this film. And one thing I can say about this is this is not a mean film. It's not a violent film. No. You're watching all this. A 4-year-old kid could watch this. There's nothing disturbing about it at all.
It's not the huge stunts like you see in Police Story and all the ones. This is before that. And there's a great reason for that, because he probably has a stunt team that he usually works with. That's why. Like he said, if he's forced to give other people stunts and they have to slow him down So they, even if they had a bigger budget, like I said, he probably didn't trust the people he was working with.
Well, he couldn't get insurance in the American market, so
Yeah.
he had his
Yeah.
team. That's why he would do it himself, and that's
Yeah.
another issue with it too. And you can sit there and say, "Oh, I don't know how to pull back," or or whatever, or we're used to going fast, say in Hong Kong or wherever it is that you're filming, and there's some merit to it. We've talked about how there's these different styles from not only the way they film it, but the scenes that they set up, and whether they do wire work or what they try to demonstrate. And that's we don't claim to be experts here on Extreme Movie Show, but we like to point that out. And here, like I say, yeah, you watch it and you go, oh my God, look how slow he is. Everybody could do that today. Well, that's really kind of not the point. This movie is well over 40 years old, 1980. So,
yeah.
I mean, like I say, and it's a great way of going, this is what Jackie was showing us he was capable of doing, and it would only get better from here.
Well, yes, because for me, the stories would get better. Because right now, it's take Jackie Chan, if you like him what he is, his martial arts, it's awesome. But the story sucks. And then as he went on, he's noticing, especially when he went back to China after Cannonball Run and all that stuff, he went back and did his own movies like The Protector and all that stuff. He started Police Star. He started knowing all of a sudden the story started getting better because they had not necessarily had a bigger budget, but they just had better writers, and they were able to. Jackie Chan was probably more involved in the writing as far as the story, choreography, and all that stuff too, as well. So I mean, remember Hong Kong, there's not all these regulations as there is in America.
Exactly.
Yes. So there we go. Like you see in Police Story when he's in the mall and he swings on the light bulbs.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
Lands,
yeah.
All in one take. Never would have had that done in America. So so this movie is kind of like it's kind of hidden, not and much to Jackie Chan's probably favor. Like I said, it's not the best story. The best parts of it is when Mako is on the scene with him. Those two just complement each other so well, especially the training monologues or montages. Sorry. And then just the complete fight at the end. I love it. And then especially when they're sneaking into the compound trying to get the girl back and they get caught, at the end there's some laughs because they're walking. There's a guy laying on the railing, the mansion, the porch, and Jake goes, I look real quick, and the guy falls off, which is probably like a 2-story drop.
Yeah.
I guess I got some funny parts in here too. Mako gets his own moment of the shine when he gets kidnapped and he's held in the courthouse because they want the other side, basically the main guy who basically was blackmailing Jackie Chan in the first place. His nephew is a nitwit. He's been through that. He's basically like a Spalding, in a term, and he ends up working for the competition or trying to throw it over, to get back his uncle. So, but he kidnaps Mako and wants Jackie Chan to throw the fight. So then Mako ends up freeing himself, basically using his strength. He's tied to the banister of the courthouse, lifts it up, and then breaks it, and then goes up and rings the bell. He's like, Jackie, I'm all right.
Yeah.
or Jerry, as they call him, Jerry Kwan. Yeah. Like I said, now with all the comedy and some of the action scenes here, one of the things you achieve because it's a 1930s movie is a lot of racial slurs. Grandma's calling him, I'm not going to say the word here, but it's just starts with a C. Yeah. What you call, and I couldn't believe just how much. But there was no hard N words, though. You notice that there's no hard N's.
No.
There was a black guy in here too who was basically during the roar bar scenes was even being bribed to take out Jackie Chan, and get a nice payday. And the funny thing is they're racing for what the prize money was like $25 for the roller derby, which Jackie Chan ended up winning despite both guys trying to beat him up. And then the prize money for at the end of the fight at the very end is $15,000, which he gets to keep, which kind of makes sense because the guy kidnapped his brother's fiance. And you think that he's going to let Jackie Chan keep the $15,000 just to spite the other guy? It's like, I don't know, man. You committed some crimes there. You kidnap people. But then again, it's 1930s. You're white. Nothing happens to you. Probably. That's some injustice.
Yeah, it's just...
it was just kind of weird to me, that's all.
Also, too, you've got the Federal Reserve, and so you had this Great Depression that got started then, and people talk about that, and because of the government. So a lot of people had a different sort of relationship with the mafia back then because it was understood especially then when culturally speaking, in most major cities, people would have their own areas of town, and so there's clear lines about it. And each different sort of group would, again, whether it's triads or tongs in Chinatown, or if it's the mafia in Italy or whoever, right? You had those kinds of distinct, lines, right? So in here, I think everybody realized that, okay, yeah, he's, maybe he's supposed to be the bad guy, but is he really a bad dude? He's a mafia guy, and that's it. And it really is not about law and order or any of that stuff. It's just about finding a way to get him into the fight. That's all.
It kind of felt like Trading Places. The two old guys making a bet, and all
which is a really racist film if you think about it from that way. They bet $1 American.
But the other thing about this movie, it kind of felt like the laughs and hijinks felt like Smokey and the Bandit, especially at the end, the guy announcer and stuff. And it's reminded me of the two little guys, the big guy and the short little guy, and Smokey and the Bandit. So yeah, like I said, you can tell there is some of that influence humor, even though, like I said, it's not really Smokey and the Bandit, but Burt Reynolds in this movie would be kind of funny. But you'll see him later in Cannonball. And Jackie Chan gets a small moment to shine before basically holding his groin at the end of the splits. That's probably the best part of the whole entire movie for me. Was the brawl with the biker scene.
It is a good scene. And here, this movie is obviously not for everybody. I remember it was on HBO so much at the time. And so you couldn't help but watch this as a kid. You're not really paying attention to the words or that. You're going, oh, what's this guy doing? Oh, what's he doing? And it was different, right? Down here in Florida, we had what was called Kung Fu Theater, which had showed two movies, Shaw Brothers or Golden Harvest, let's say, like at 10 o'clock. And then, by noon, you're getting ready to go outside and then watching wrestling later. And we only had so many channels. So this movie seemed like it came on. It was different because you're like, hey, wait a minute. This is like those movies that were always on that were horribly dubbed, but you're like, okay, is it this style or that style? You don't know.
Yeah.
And what's smart about this is they don't go balls to wall with Jackie, but they say, hey, like I said, they're going to have a training montage. They're going to have him doing something solo. Look, I'm not a big fan, and I don't care to see anybody do any sort of roller skating. And yes, it's in musicals and that sort of stuff. And of course, Gene Kelly did it the best, in my opinion. But this is a really actually long sequence of roller skating and fighting with roller skates.
Yes.
So you're watching this going, okay, this is my cup of tea, but it's entertaining enough. And I don't know how involved Jackie was with the stunts, but you're like, okay, I get it. They're allowing him to be Jackie Chan in the film.
Yeah, there's also one part of the chorus of the roller derby where they're actually spraying them with a fire hose. Two fire hoses, actually.
Yeah.
So you see him he actually grabs because one guy stole his helmet, so he grabs a garbage can lid. Yeah, and that's a lot. I mean, going against that pressure, man. I guarantee they had to try it because it was also on an incline.
Yeah.
Ramp.
Yeah. And you could tell too, no matter what safety precautions they take, and we know that Jackie prefers to do the majority of his stunts himself. And of course, it became the thing later on at the end of his movies. They show the outtakes with him getting injured and making mistakes. Here, you don't quite get that. You just but you do get to see him, like I say, doing acrobatic stuff at the beginning. And you're like, hey, that's different. And that captures your attention because it is. They're an interracial couple. I mean, especially for the time, that was a big deal. So it's, she looks like such an innocent girl. You don't realize, okay, she was a Playboy playmate, just a few years earlier. So it's not a bad film. It's a good introduction. I'm not going to say it's a great film on its own, but where it ranks in Jackie's films, it's probably nowhere near the top. But a lot of people might think of Rush Hour. They might think of Cannonball Run, was obviously a lot more popular because it's got Burt Reynolds and a bunch of other people in it, right? But again, just purely on Jackie Chan isms, this is a good way to start.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the intro. He's on the bridge, he's climbing it, he's doing stuff while she's doing the car on the bridge, and he's just doing sit-ups and flips and all that stuff, pull-ups. It kind of reminds me of, I believe it was Drunken Master, right? I wonder what was either Drunken Master or it was Fearless Hyena, where it starts off with him doing a montage like that, or basically climbing and doing some stuff.
I think it's Fearless, if I'm correct.
Might be Fearless. It's a very, very fun film, though. Like I said, you can get past kind of the kind of boring story. It's an hour and a half long. It's available it's on Tubi right now. Kind of a bad auto quality on Tubi, but there are other dubs out there somewhere else. You can get it through illegal or illegal means, whatever you prefer. That being said, I wouldn't like to get this in a collection. There actually was a record for this too, the soundtrack, everything. So like you said, and you said this is the guy who also worked on what movie was it? The soundtrack was it?
Well, he did the Mission Impossible thing. This is Layla Schifrin. He's done a
Oh yeah, yeah.
lot of stuff. You look at his catalog, you're
Wow.
like, holy
That's
crap! They spared no
yeah.
expense in getting somebody solid in here for the theme for it too, and it is kind of a jazzy theme.
Yeah. So Big Brawl, also known as they're okay. We explain that the whole Big Brawl for those who are coming in. The Big Brawl is known as Battle Creek Brawl because they decided to basically abandon the original title and then quickly change it. They released it under they had both names at the same time, pretty much, and it gets a little confusing because if you saw this, the Big Brawl, when it came out in 1980, it's now Battle Creek Brawl, just like Raiders is now Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't understand it, but apparently they thought it was going to make it better. But to me, it doesn't. Changing the name, if a film is not good, just calling it something else is not going to mean it's going to make it better. All you're going to do is piss off the person who had to spend $5 thinking it was a different movie.
You brought up earlier somebody I wanted to mention too, because we have yet to do his couple of films, but Bruce Lee back in the early 70s, obviously he was Kato on the Green Hornet. I if I recall correctly, I believe you mentioned recently that you've not seen any of those films. Is that right?
Nope.
Okay.
I've never seen Bruce Lee film.
The whole idea of Bruce Lee really busting down the doors in the American market in the 70s was pretty particularly telling because one, it was only a couple movies, and really it was one massive one, and then he died. And
Enter the Dragon, right?
Yeah, well, the John Saxon, Bolo Young, they go to the island with the guy that's got the claw and everything, and his other films are okay too. But they tried to mismatch some of them and release them after he died, and that's just garbage shit. The thing in the 70s, there was so much more relaxation of rules where you had a lot more exploitation type movies. I've always mentioned Blackula as a black vampire, where they would use that as a theme to talk about African American. At the time in the early 70s things, even James Bond and Live and Let Die is very dated with some of the topics that they have in there. And so Bruce Lee, when this came out, this was huge. And the whole idea supposedly of one of my favorite shows from the 70s, Kung Fu, with David Carradine, and he's a part of the Carradine clan that's been around forever.
Yep.
People say the reason why the show stopped was because David himself got so involved into the philosophical side of martial arts that he kind of went a little batshit, and he literally went the remainder of his life, even though they kind of rebooted it in the 80s and he did a bunch of shitty films for the rest of his career. That was his jam, and a lot of people think that Bruce Lee, that was his idea. So again, Bruce Lee, even smaller than Jackie Chan, it's kind of not the point. He really had an impact with presenting what martial arts are. I think Jackie Chan, to his credit, again, me not being his biggest fan, I really appreciate the fact that, when you start young and you gain skills in something, whether it's forced upon you, in his case by the government or by choice, it's really interesting. And fortunately, in the 80s, this was a great time because we had a lot of guys like Chuck Norris and people that were legitimate that turned into doing things. I know you're a big time Seagal hater, but he had a couple great films to demonstrate what his martial art was, and JCVD had his own thing. So it was nice that we had, for a good 10-year run here, people like Jackie Chan coming up, and these other guys here too. But again, even though Jackie came to America, he's not very fond of what he did here, and he wasn't able, I think, to probably artistically do it the way he wanted to. And I think it was much later when he got to the Rush Hour films that people really said, okay, it's time for it. Because sometimes you can be ahead of the game, and Bruce Lee certainly was. And if he'd been around and didn't die, I can only imagine how much bigger martial arts films would have been to somebody like Jackie Chan. This could have been even more of a massive hit for him, rather than just an okay one as far as returns go, because of just how powerful. But that's a testament to the impact of Bruce Lee and what was happening in the 70s. A lot of people came back from Vietnam or even Korea, and a lot of military guys had their first exposure to what martial arts meant. Poor people with farm equipment, right? Or just their hands. And that was kind of not really something the U.S. really knew. So I think when America gets a hold of something like martial arts in the 70s and all that, they get interested in it. And like I said, Kung Fu was massive. Bruce Lee was a big hit here. A lot of people love all stuff. So I give Jackie a lot of credit, because I didn't realize at the time as a kid watching this film that, hey, this guy's really fucking good.
I'm looking at the guy who plays Kiss in here. His actual name is H.B. Haggerty.
He's been in some stuff. I couldn't say off the top of my head, but you've seen him around with his mustache.
So
He's got a look.
where's that? Looking at his IMDb right now, he was in the Muppet movie. He played Lumberjack in there. For those watching Richard Muppet movie. He was in Foxy Brown. He played he played Brandy. Paint Your Wagon. He was Steve Bull.
Paint Your Wagon. Go kidding.
Yeah, he's in Paint Your Wagon. He's in there. He's also in Rad. He's Sergeant Smith in there. He's one of the cops. But he was also in a episode of Mr. Belvedere. He was on Zorro and Son, Fall Guys, an episode of that. Fantasy Island did 2 episodes. Incredible Hulk. He was Gregor. He was on Soap. He was also on The Love Boat. This guy was on everything. Buck Rogers, 25th Century. What was the other one? He was in Columbo, which you guys are reviewing on the channel. Look for the first episode review on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
He's on Bob Newhart, Starsky and Hutch, Beretta, Happy Days. This guy was in everything. Monster Squad, Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, Bronk. He was on Police Story, the TV series, Switch, Earthquake. He was in that movie. He's a pool player. He was the bartender in the movie called The Wrestler back in 1994. Kung Fu. He was the husky miner. Adam 12. The guy was in everything pretty much. Get Smart is where he first started though. He was uncredited as Grappo, but
I'll bring up one last little idea now that you're mentioning this guy. We're big Clint Eastwood fans. We've done a lot of his films on here. Certainly have a lot more that we can do. Back then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a very small group over, whether you call it Gold's Gym and Nautilus Equipment or Arthur Jones, made popular circuit stuff. That's a different type of exercise, for lack of a better term, because it's not really training than weight training, heavyweight training, like Arnold and a lot of the Venice Beach guys did. That they lifted heavy weights, low reps. And so it was just this cultural thing starting in California about taking care of your body. And so there was another guy like this jabroni you just talked about, who's not very cosmetically handsome, but he's a big dude. He's a character, and you could definitely have a successful role because people like Clint Eastwood would say, hey, I'm just like Jackie Chan. I've worked with these guys before. They're legit tough guys. They know what they're doing. They can take a punch. They know what we're looking for. And someone like Conan's father from Conan the Barbarian, William Smith, big jack dude. He was in a lot of movies with Clint Eastwood and other things too. So you could have a long career without being an A-lister back then. And so I think, again, another testament to this movie, The Big Brawl, is the fact that there's a lot of these guys that you're going to look at and not know who the hell they are or whatever. But if you grew up seeing a lot of this, you'd recognize and go, yeah. And unfortunately,
I love them.
Exactly. And again, people are martial arts fan, but like you and I have talked about professional wrestling, you could have 50 gazillion kicks and this and that, and it could be awesome. You're like, oh my God, how can he do this? Well, obviously they're doing it, but it's different than building up to one big one that, you can sell. You can't unwind it. And I think that Jackie was very smart with this style, not being a big guy, to make it as representative of his abilities. We see somebody like Scott Adkins now with triple forward somersaults and a bunch of camera angles and this and that. It's impressive, but at some point you're like, I want something that's a little more down to earth and grounded and controlled. Doesn't mean it can't be fast or whatever, but that's one of the things I think is pretty interesting whenever we've talked about martial arts films is, what they're like and the history of how they've evolved. Because you look at Jackie Chan later, oh my God, everything is, I don't think they speed the film up. We know he can go a lot faster.
Yeah, and a lot bigger stunts.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yes. Especially when you get I think it's Super Cup, the one where him and what's her name, Michelle Yao, where she lands the motorcycle on top of the speeding train.
Mission Impossible did not do it first.
It took her about like 3 or 4 tries to get it, and they can like, oh, those poor motorcycles, it's like, just like when I watch the Dukes of Hazzard, I can't just but cringe every time they land a car. I'm thinking like, that they don't use that car anymore. And how many cars did they bust up before they got the General Lee to look perfectly? It's like,
T.J. Hooker is the epitome of wrecking cars in the 80s, because like we see, that was a big thing in the 70s television, was wrecking cars and in movies and explosions.
That was the thing too. Blues Brothers. How many cop cars did they destroy? Wow, and those pileups.
Do you see a lot of car wrecks in movies today, though?
Yeah.
Or TV shows? You don't.
There's a lot of them are CG though.
I know.
Movies, you don't see like the real explosions like you see in Miami Vice, the very pilot episode. Yeah,
Or like when they bury Ted Nugent alive in his after he gets shot up. I mean, he buried that expensive ass car in dirt.
Chuck Norris in his vehicle, and they bury him in local crate, and he just drives out.
Hey, look, it is as cheap and basic as some of the stuff looks in this movie. When I think of the last Indiana Jones movie, which is god awful, and I think of the whole chase scene that they had there, and forget the actress and forget the talking and all that crap, just the horrible CGI and how horrible it looked to me makes me appreciate just some of the generic TV stunts that they had. I mean, we've talked about Sharky's Machine and a bunch of there's a lot of good physical action in the 70s and 80s on TV shows and movies. And again, Big Brawl, not a bad way to start with Jackie Chan. It's a very watered down, very insta Jackie Chan kind of light. It's okay for what it is.
It is Jackie light.
It is.
And it's also his first time you get to hear his voice in English.
Yes.
His actual voice, not someone dubbing over him. He learned English so he can, just branch out. And sucks that this movie kind of flopped because it really isn't that bad. It's not offensive really at all. It is kind of slow at certain points, but what helps it is that every time you get to see Mako's in like 3 or 4 times in this movie, you see him, and it just reminds me, oh crap, I'm awake now. Because some of the scenes are kind of like, okay, I don't care about his brother. His dad's kind of like, I don't want you fighting. No, you learn all this self-defense. Or all this.
Shut up and get off the screen.
And he's telling Jackie Chan, it's like, oh, what is all this fancy kicks going to get you in life? You're going to be here. You could work. You could be a doctor, or you could be, take over the restaurant. He's like, no, I don't. It's too slow. That's why I quit when I'm a doctor. And he's like, I'll probably open up a school. Teach martial arts stuff. Yeah. And it's like his dad is just kind of like all against fighting, but then he cheers Jackie Chan at the end of the radio. Only wins the 15K, obviously, because the dad now is like, hey, I support you. Bring money. No.
At the end of the day, RDV, you need killers. You need people that can get stuff done. No more happy talk.
Yeah, that's the thing. He said, because the whole thing is Jackie Chan got involved because these guys, the mobsters, were basing one, we're going to do a racketeer, or what do you call it? They're going to do extortion on the money. His dad, and he's like, I won't pay. He's like, really, Dad? Because you're gonna pay if you know. They basically he raised a meat cleaver at him, and they basically pushed him down like a old fool, and they said, count your fingers. Next time you won't have that many. If you assault us again. The one dude I felt bad from. I can't remember what his name is in here, but he's one of the guys that's on the roller derby team with him. He ends up getting his face all cut up by the nephew of the mobster, and yeah, like I said, that guy gets beat up, but at the end, hope he gets arrested. It's just desserts to him. But Jackie Chan really went to town on him too, beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
But
any other final thoughts? Wrapping up here.
Not much. Look forward to next Tuesday. We'll have another kung fu martial arts movie on here. This Sunday, we might record something, throw it up on there because it is Easter Sunday.
Yes.
So,
yeah, we may not be around for that too. And Thursday night, our first episode of Columbo, the TV series, season 1, we're dropping. It's not the TV movie 2-part or whatever. So it's I will say this, and I'm not giving it a hyperbole a lot, and I'm not a big cheerleader of stuff. And yes, I can say why I like it. Holy crap! This is one of the best first episodes of any TV show I've ever seen. And I'm not joking about Columbo, and I don't say that lightly because I always thought he was a bit of a goof. Professor Pixel, the young 20-something gentleman here on the Extreme Movie Show, we talk a little about this here at the beginning, and we review things a little differently. We go through the episode and kind of talk things out a little bit, and we develop a pace depending on how the show goes. And this, I know there's really good TV out there. I know like Easy Eric, being one of our founding family members here, it seems like he's been on so often. He's a guy that really likes really good TV, and there's a lot of it in the 70s and 80s. And so part of what we do here is just experiment and check different things out because we do have a young audience and a lot of people around the world. And it's interesting to revisit stuff because it's weird to sit there and say, while Jackie Chan's still alive, hey, let's review his American debut. Oh, by the way, it's over 40, almost 45 years old. That sounds weird to say, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I just looked at it. It was 1974 is when the Easter Beagle with Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
50 years old.
I know. Right. And where Charlie Brown's even older.
Right. All right. So
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Big Brawl, Jackie Chan, 1980. Nice introductory, condensed down performance of what he would later on become to really show us. So if you're a Jackie Chan fan or martial arts fan, this is a little gem. It's really not a horrible film. It's a little bit different. It can be worth checking out too. So that's why we wanted to talk.
It's free on Tubi right now, so you have nothing to lose but the time, maybe.
Tubi to the rescue.
Yep.
All right. Good night now.
Later, guys.